Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Berto Willis, your host. I'm here with the one and only Rashad Robinson from The Color of Change. Rashad, it's a pleasure to have you on today. How are you doing, first of all? How are things going with your good old, with this real great group that you have getting things accomplished?
You know, I'm doing all right. Every single day, though, we hear all these stories of things that we want to take on. We just don't have the capacity to engage on everything. While at the same time, we are just also seeing an unprecedented number of people taking action. That sort of action rate, the people wanting to engage, the people creating their own petitions on the platform, all of that is really inspiring. And so there's the mix of all the pain that we're dealing with, but also that sort of hopefulness of people wanting to get involved and take action. And so, I feel compelled to press ahead and do all that I can in this moment.
Well, look, first of all, I want to thank you for the kind of work that you're doing, because we need people out there on the front lines. And my God, you guys are always out there. I want to read you something and then get your take on it. This is what I don't remember. I think this was in The Guardian, okay? And it said as follows. Attorney Alan Tucker told Inside Edition Friday that he was responsible for releasing the footage which showed his pals Gregory and Travis McMichael engage in a fatal altercation with Mr. Arbery in Brunswick on February 23rd. I really thought releasing the video would put the truth out to the public, Tucker stated. If Arbery had just froze and hadn't done anything, then he wouldn't have been shot. When I read that, I want to hear what you have to say about that, first of all.
I think it's, in so many ways, it encapsulates sort of white supremacy in such a very clear way that this white man in the South could believe that this video was going to exonerate him, because if that black person just knew his place, if he just followed orders of a person that wasn't in authority, wasn't authority in any way, then nothing bad would have sort of happened to him, as if being subjected to the whims of individual white people with guns isn't bad in and of itself. And so, what I think is that it really does speak to the ways in which white folks in many places around the country, and that's not just the South,
right,
believe that they have authority over Black people's bodies. They have authority over Black people's movements, and that looking at that video in so many ways, so many people all around the country could be outraged, but the hierarchy of racial privilege, the hierarchy of the privilege to move freely and to be a fully fledged citizen and adult, how much it is often not extended to us.
This whole week was sort of put a triple whammy on us. We had the incident with Mr. Arbery. We had the incident in Indiana where, after a cop apparently decimated a young man, looked and said, I guess it's going to be a closed casket, which tells you the kind of empathy, emotions that these guys have. And then we have this COVID attack that is attacking the people that are first responders and people of color because of the jobs that they have. It's almost like a huge battle to be fought. I like to talk about problems that we know are there. But above and beyond that, I want to talk about, Rashad, what solutions do we have? I think we have a responsibility, after showing all these problems, which we've showed over and over again, to start giving definitive solutions to what needs to get done.
So a couple of things. I want to walk through some things that I think can be done. And I couldn't agree with you more on not just solutions, but the sort of pathway to getting to solutions, right? Because policies and a plan are nothing without the infrastructure to achieve it, without the people power and the campaigns to actually make the vision of a new day possible. And so, at Color of Change, we have done a couple of things, and it all speaks to what we're trying to do, which is drive the right level of action to force the system to do things the system doesn't want to do. Because right now, what we're experiencing is not unfortunate like a car accident. It is unjust. It is manufactured. These are not accidents. They are part of how systems have been designed to work. And so a couple of things. As it relates to COVID, we have built out a platform called the Black Response. The blackresponse.org is our organizing hub where we are translating the sort of outrage and energy of our people to actual action, giving everyday people things that they can do in very clear ways, from the kind of more corporate accountability work of ensuring that grocery stores are actually doing things like taking SNAP benefits for folks for food delivery, so that mothers and fathers are not having to go out the house and risk their children, demanding protection for essential workers, ensuring that Black and brown businesses actually get resources out of this recovery and all the money doesn't go to big businesses, making real demands around testing and health. All of these things that we can both expose the inequalities and then push for real change. As it relates to these issues of policing, this has been something we have been in for years. At Color of Change, we've built a long-term strategy of changing the district attorney offices around the country. And this is a long-term effort. It is really focused on sometimes kicking folks out of office and putting people in that can champion our causes. Sometimes we have to put people in office who disappoint us, right? You're in Houston, and we did help put in Kim Ogg in office, who we knew would be better than Devin Anderson. But Kim Ogg has been a huge disappointment, and time again has put Black folks and Black communities in harm's way, has prosecuted people for poverty level crimes, has made the criminal justice system a first resort instead of an in resort. And we've had to fight her on everything from expanding her office to actually delivering on her promises. But all around the country, we are focused on district attorneys, and particularly as it relates to what's happened with Ahmaud Arbery. We are calling and demanding on those district attorneys to not just resign, but we are working to force the Georgia bar to launch an investigation of these lawyers who did not do their work. We are working to further kind of expose all the ways in which these lawyers put their hands on the scale of justice, did not stand up for Black lives and Black victims. It's far too often that when Black people are victims of crimes, the rules change. The rules change in terms of how prosecution works. And that means that we have to fight for justice. So on both ends, we have a set of demands, right? A larger set of demands, but none of it works without people getting involved. And so for folks who are listening, who are outraged, right? It is not just enough for us to tweet out our frustrations. It's not just enough for us to have conversations about it and post on Facebook. We have to join together for collective action. Right now, the more voices that we can get involved in this effort, the more we can send a message to the folks in Georgia, but also we can support the local folks as they are working to translate some of that energy to voter registration, as they're trying to translate some of that energy to thinking about how they engage in upcoming district attorney elections. All of this will, for us, be really focused on ensuring that we are not just loud and outraged, but we are translating the power that we have in this moment to hold people accountable.
That is so important. With respect to Barnhill, the prosecutor, the DA in Georgia, he prosecuted a woman named Olivia Pearson. And for helping a woman use a voting machine, a Black woman using a voting machine. I hope folks realize that was not an aberration what occurred with Mr. Arbery, but that is a consistency, which means I am happy to hear that you're talking about making sure that DAs like him are removed from office, because they are the genesis, the beginning of the problem, because that is the entry into the criminal justice system. He has that power with him, which hurts us quite a bit. Now, I love what you had to say with respect to engaging people and letting people understand that it's not just posting on Facebook or showing outrage. Like I said, what we want are solutions. That is great, with making sure that Kim Og and everybody else respond to what we know they must respond to. What do we do about the COVID issue, other than restaurant, or other than ensuring the grocery stores or there? How do we? I wrote a piece yesterday talking about a new economy that's going to be coming. We are not going back to what the old economy looks like. The well-to-do people with professions will be able to work at home. They'll be able to do what you and I are doing right now. We are in the safety of a closed location, and we can discuss this stuff this way. But there are those who have to go to the grocery stores. There are those who have to do their deliveries, etc. They are going to be still out there without a healthcare system that guarantees that being out there is a risk that we all should be involved in mitigating for them, without them being able to have their kids in a safe place. Where do we make all those ties in now, especially since we're going to have a changed economy when this stuff is all over?
And so we've taken two approaches at Color of Change. There's the short term, right, around these pieces of legislation which are moving quickly. And you better believe that as I'm having my conversations with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer and members of the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Progressive Caucus, we are absolutely talking about the long term, but we are recognizing that they're moving quickly on pieces of legislation. So we're trying to lay as much equity into that. And what I mean by equity is that not just laying over solutions that are blanket solutions, but recognizing that because of bad decisions that preceded this crisis and bad decisions that have followed this crisis, it has impacted various communities in different ways. And so we need to make sure that the recovery actually addresses it. So for instance, sending all the money for small businesses through the big banks will not impact Black and brown businesses, because we recognize all the ways in which the Black businesses and brown businesses have been fleeced, targeted, and attacked and ignored by big banks. It's not that Black people are less likely to get loans. It's that banks are less likely to give loans to Black people. It's not that Black people are the problem here. Black people, in fact, have been the solution. We have been, along with our Latino brothers and sisters and API brothers and sisters, oftentimes disproportionately essential workers. We have been the folks creating all sorts of beautiful spaces on Instagram and other spaces of joy. We have been the folks on the front lines of this recovery, oftentimes talked about as essential workers now, but ignored when public policy was supposed to give us $15 an hour or ensure that we had healthcare in our communities. And so, you know, I live in New York City, where every night at 7 o'clock, people are out on their balconies clapping for folks and cheering for folks that they previously would not fight for. We talk about that as presence without power, visibility and awareness without the ability to change the rules. And so for us, we recognize that we have to layer in through this rapid response work the long-term energy of ensuring that we are thinking about and engaging and fighting for the economy in different ways. That means universal access to healthcare that is at scale, but it's not just access to healthcare sort of in the abstract, in the like a theoretical sense. It actually means we need healthcare institutions in our community. We need community health. So it's not just enough that you can go see a doctor if you don't actually have a doctor in your community to see. So we need all those things paired together. We need access to resources and payments to folks to be able to keep people at home in this moment. But beyond, we need to think about all the ways that corporate consolidation, automation, and the use of our data have made it so that jobs that have been shipped away will never come back, and jobs that have changed. And in the richest country in the world, people should have the resources to buy what they need, to be able to take care of their families with things that they need. We need to actually have a real long-term strategy around housing. I recently hosted an Instagram live with Julian Castro, who was had one of the more progressive platforms in this last presidential election campaign cycle, and was also the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and really just connected not just housing for housing's sake specifically. We talked about that, but we also talked about it as it relates to the work we have to do immediately to decarcerate our prisons and jails, where social distancing is literally impossible. But if we're only focusing on decarceration now because of COVID, we are missing the part that the United States has 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarcerated population. We already had a mass incarceration problem. And so I hear a lot of people saying, well, COVID has made us more interconnected. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and I just recently published an op-ed piece in USA Today, where we talked about in that piece together about how what it's actually exposed is that the rich and wealthy can get on jets and in cars and go to beach homes, while some folks are wondering whether or not their water is going to be turned off. And those same people that are sort of off in beach homes are not paying their fair share of taxes into communities that they are sort of reaping the benefits and rewards of, which is why water is getting shut off in the first place. And so part of this does not change without activism. It does not change without us kicking people out of office and putting people in office. It does not change without us holding corporations accountable and holding politicians who side with corporations over the people accountable. All of this is going to take a new level of activism and work to get to the short term and then to build for the long term. And right now, there's a whole set of debates around this next piece of federal legislation that will be coming down the pike. And once that legislation is passed, there are going to be fights in every single state to ensure that the money actually moves equitably. And so for folks in Texas, what you're going to have to recognize is that if you live in Harris County and you live in Houston and surrounding areas, that the governor is not your friend, and that he's going to be doing everything he can to ensure that that money is not moved in an equitable way. He does not want to make Harris County more powerful. And so at the federal level right now, we are fighting to make sure, and I just had a good conversation with Congressman Clyburn, who's also fighting for this, is that to make sure that when they talk about money for cities and states, the money for cities isn't predicated on whether or not the state wants to give it. It actually goes directly to the cities, because we can't, particularly when we think about the disproportionate number of Black people that live in southern states, right, oftentimes under governors who have not just ignored, but have attacked them. Like you think about a governor like Kemp in Georgia, who is the voter suppressor in chief of this country. We think about him, and we've got to recognize that he's the narrowly tailored set of businesses that he picked to reopen were businesses where Black and brown people work and Black and brown people go, hair salons, barbershops, bowling alleys. He was basically using Black people as guinea pigs. And so for us at Color of Change, we're recognizing that we've got to fight on many different fronts. And part of why I'm really asking people to join us at the Black Response is because that is a hub. And what you'll see there is a wide range of campaigns, but it gives us the ability, when I go to meet with members of Congress, to say, I've got hundreds of thousands of people who care about this. And these folks will be voting on election day. And we need to send them a message that you're fighting for them, Democrats or Republicans.
Rashad,
yes.
let me hold you there. Tell folks how they can connect there. That's very important.
Yeah. So go to the blackresponse.org, the blackresponse.org. And once you get there, you'll see a range of campaigns. You'll also see a lot of education material, video discussions with folks like Congressman Clyburn and Ayanna Pressley and Pramila Jayapal, all sort of members of Congress. We talked with Stacey Abrams about vote by mail and democracy issues. And so you can get educated about the issues. You can dig in deeper on criminal justice and other things that we're working on. But most importantly, you can take action. You can sign up on those campaigns and join us to take action. And what we've been able to do is take those voices to the halls of Congress, because in this moment, we need to show folks that we've got numbers, because you better believe the corporations are showing up to tell them they've got the money.
We've been talking about that, but Rashad, you said something that is very important, and I want to centralize on that a bit, and I want to make sure, I hope Color of Change and a lot of other organizations start centralizing on it. Specifically, the rich people that you talk about, the wealthy that you talk about, the corporations that you talk about, they are all built on the back of those people that go out every day, the ones that are most hurt by COVID. So asking or demanding for healthcare or demanding for these different things, it's not a favor. I am constantly trying to express to people that they are doing no favors for the policies that we are asking for. Mm-hmm. They're just taking payments for what is overdue.
Well, corporations are getting bailed out. They're not getting loans. They're getting bailouts, right? When the airline industry got bailed out in 2008, during that crisis, they instead of reinvesting in the airlines and getting all that taxpayers' dollars, instead of stop charging us the extra baggage fees and everything else that if you travel, you sort of know has been sort of a feature of the airlines and a continued feature since 2008, they started buying back their own stocks.
Yes.
Not investing long term, but buying back their own stocks.
It was a way to defeat taxes as well.
Yeah, we would tell everyday people, regular people on Main Street, that they were being irresponsible. But these corporations, they did that. So now the crisis hits again, and these companies don't have the liquidity. So now they're asking for another bailout. People, and Congress is offering everyday people loans. Bailing out the corporations with tax dollars and giving us loans with this idea that the economy is going to somehow come back and we'll be able to pay back these loans. It is an absolute trick bag. And we do have to change the way in which we talk about these things. I said it earlier, far too often we talk about systems in a passive voice and talk about people who are oppressed in an active voice. So we will say, Black people are less likely to be hired by tech companies, instead of tech companies are more likely to exclude Black people from employment. We will say things like, we will say things like, women business owners are less likely to get loans from banks, instead of banks are less likely to give loans to women business owners.
Right.
We need to put the onus on the systems and the decision makers that have continued to put us in harm's way. Let's not spend all of our time fixing those who are oppressed, but let's spend our time challenging the oppressor, challenging the systems that have put us in harm's way, and building the power to hold them accountable and to change it, right? I hear this thing about vulnerable people all the time, and I have to oftentimes think of vulnerability is a personal trait. When someone is vulnerable, it's a personal trait. I'm feeling vulnerable today, right? People are not vulnerable, right? Latino immigrants are not vulnerable. They are exploited and attacked. Black communities are not vulnerable. They have been targeted, exploited, and attacked. We have to say what we mean so we get what we need. And when we say what we mean, then we build the power to get closer to getting the things that we need. And that has to be part of this effort, because far too often, folks in power would love to spend time trying to fix our families, trying to fix our communities, trying to fix the decisions that we make in our communities, instead of dealing with all of the systems that have continued to exploit. Jeff Bezos has made over $20 billion since this crisis has hit. and Amazon refuses to give their employees paid sick leave at scale and the type of living wage that will take care of them. That is sick. That is a person who is deeply flawed. That is the type of person that we should be asking questions about mental health and other issues. Someone that could sit and do that and think it was okay. That is how we have to sort of refocus it. But we spend a lot of time trying to fix people when we know that that in the long term won't ever yield the results.
Rashad Robinson, president of Color of Change, and that's the reason I wanted you on. That is well said, and that is how we want to close.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always good to be here. Invite me back anytime. And to my folks in Houston, Harris County, Color of Change is always proud to work with you all. We're going to continue to do the work to hold Kim Ogg accountable, to do criminal justice reform work, and to build more power there. So hopefully folks will join us at colorofchange.org. Join us at the Black Response. When you go to colorchange.org, you'll have an opportunity to sign the petition for Ahmaud Arbery and to join that campaign effort, as well as to do all the work we're doing collectively to respond to the COVID crisis. And it's called the Black Response, but I want people to know that, in America, when Black people win, it is a sign that the country is moving in the right direction for everyone. So Color of Change is a movement of not just Black folks, but allies of Black folks. And so in this moment, if you are an ally and you saw that video of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, and you are outraged by it, the best way to translate that outrage into something meaningful is to take action. And after you take action with us, pick up the phone and call those in your family who might need to hear from you, who might need to hear a little push, who might need to be challenged about these issues. That's how change happens. So thanks for having me, and let's keep fighting.
Thank you very much, Rashad.
Thanks.